Hey guys, welcome to my home. This is my favorite reading porch. This is where Miss Spencer loves to come to read. Today, we're going to read a story that's a fairy tale. Remember fairy tales? We've been talking about fairy tales. The last fairy tale we read was Sleeping Beauty. And if you remember in Sleeping Beauty, we discovered that in fairy tales, they've been told over and over and over and over again. It's called oral tradition. And the amazing thing about fairy tales is that they pop up all around the world. Many different versions of fairy tale stories. But the ones that we shared today for you, and the ones that we're going to be looking at in the next couple weeks, that the Brothers Grimm put in writing for us back in the 1800s, they are what's known as our classic fairy tales, fairy tales that had been told, and then they put together their version. If you remember, some of the versions may be slightly different, just because when we retell a story, it changes here and there with some slight details. For example, the one that we're going to read today is Rumpelstiltskin, and it's retold again by Paul O. Zelinsky. In his introduction and in the back, he tells us that the Grimm brothers had 3 versions of this story. This particular version stems out of their second version, which was the one that they particularly said that they liked the best. So, we share with you today the story of Rumpelstiltskin. Rumpelstiltskin, told and illustrated by Paul O. Zelinsky. Once there was a poor miller who had a beautiful daughter. A miller is somebody who works in the field and will grind the wheat for flour. On his way to town one day, the miller encountered the king. Wanting to impress him, the miller said, "Your Royal Highness, I have a daughter who knows the art of spinning straw into gold." Now the king had a passion for gold, and such an art was very intriguing to him. So he ordered the miller to send his daughter to the castle straight away. When the girl was brought before the king led her to a room that was full of straw. Look at all the straw in that room. Oh my goodness. He gave her spools and a spinning wheel, just like we talked about in Sleeping Beauty. And he said to her, "You may spin all night, but if you have not spun the straw into gold by the morning, you shall die." With that, he locked the door, and the girl was left inside. There sat the poor miller's daughter without the slightest idea of how anyone could spin straw into gold. For the life of her, she did not know what to do. Oh, she grew more and more frightened, and then she began to weep. Oh, yes. Whatever am I going to do? Suddenly, the door sprang open, and a tiny man stepped inside. "Good evening, Mistress Miller," he said. "Why are you sobbing so?" "Oh," cried the girl, "I must spin this straw into gold, and I don't know how." "Well, what will you give me if I spin it for you?" the little man asked. I will give you my necklace," answered the girl. "Very well then." The little man took the necklace and sat down at the spinning wheel. He pulled 3 times. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Whirl, 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 and the spool was wound full of gold thread. He fitted another spool on, and then home, home. The purring of the wheel went once again, and it was once full of gold again. So he went until morning, when all of the straw was spun, and those spools were full of gold. A spool of thread is what you put thread on, and look, he's putting in wheat, and out is coming gold thread. When the king came at sunrise, he was amazed and delighted, but all that gold only made him more greedy. So he led the miller's daughter to a larger room, filled with more straw. He ordered her once again, "Spin this straw before dawn into gold, if you value your life." Oh dear. The girl just did not know what to do. Oh no, she began to weep. Once more, the door opened, and the little man stepped in. "What will you give me if I spin this straw into gold for you?" he asked. I shall give you the ring on my finger," answered the girl. The little man took her ring. Then he sat at the spinning wheel. Home, home, home. He started whirling, and before the night was over, he had spun all the straw into gleaming gold. Oh my. Shortly after sunrise, the king returned. Piles of golden spools glowed in the morning light. The king rejoiced at the sight of so much gold, and still he was not satisfied. He led the miller's daughter to a third, even bigger room that was piled high with straw. "Tonight you must spin this straw too," said the king, "and if you succeed, you shall become my wife," because he thought he could not find a richer wife in all the world if he had a wife that could make gold out of straw. When the king had left, the little man appeared for the third time. "What will you give me if I spin for you yet once more?" he asked. "Oh, I have nothing else," the girl replied. "Well, then promise me that when you become queen, your first child will belong to me." The miller's daughter gasped. Oh my! How could she promise such a thing? Then she thought, but who knows whether that will ever even happen? And all she could think of was no other way to save herself. So she promised, "Very well then, you may have my first child." And once again, the little old man spun home, 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 all night long. He spun all of the straw into gold. When the king came into the morning and found everything as he had wished, he did as he said he would. He married the miller's beautiful daughter, and she became queen. A year passed, and the queen brought a handsome baby boy into the world. She gave scarcely a thought to that little man that she had made a promise to. But one day she was quickly reminded. He appeared suddenly in her room. "Now give me what you promised me," he demanded. The queen pleaded with the little man. He could take all of the royal treasure if he wanted to, but he could not take her child. But her pleading was in vain. Then she began to weep so piteously that at last the little man was moved. Fine then, I will give you 3 days. And if by the end of that time you know my name, then you may keep your child. Oh, long into the night the queen sat, and through the next day, just thinking over all of the names she had ever heard. That evening, sure enough, the little man returned. Beginning with names, she started to call out to him. Caspar? Melchior? Balthazar? The queen recited every name she knew, one after another. But to each one, the little man continued to reply, "Ha, ha, ha! That's not my name." The second day, the queen had inquiries made in town, searching for names that she may have never heard before. And when the little man came in that evening, she posed the strangest and most unusual ones to him. She said, "Could it be Beastie Ribs?" "No, it's not Beastie Ribs. How about Lego Rom?" "Oh, no, it is not that." "String Bones, then. Is it String Bones?" But he would only reply, "That is not my name. Day 2, you only have 1 more day." Now the queen grew truly frightened, and she sent her most faithful servant into the woods to look for the little man. The servant searched through the thickets and all over the clearings, deep into the forest, until, at last, on the top of a hill, she spied him. He was riding on a cooking spoon around a great fire, and he was crying out in a song, "I brew my beer, I bake my loaves, and soon the queen's own child, her son I shall claim the most. Oh, lucky me, for no one knows that Rumpelstiltskin is my name. There is none other to take the claim." The servant made her way back as fast as she could manage, and at midday she reached the castle. Can you imagine how glad the queen was when she heard that name? Late that evening, the little man arrived. "Now, Miss Queen," he said, "do you know my name? For I have come to take the child." So the queen asked him, "Could your name be Will?" No. "Is your name Phil?" No. "In that case," said the queen, "could it be Rumpelstiltskin?" "It's the devil that told you that! The devil must have told you that!" shrieked Rumpelstiltskin, and in a fury he jumped on his cooking spoon and he flew out the window. And he has never been seen again. But the queen and the king lived happily ever after with her firstborn son. Interesting story indeed. From lessons to be learned from stories that's been told from long, long ago. Have a wonderful time. We'll see you next week with another fairy tale. And maybe you'll remember the name Rumpelstiltskin. Till then,